Hello everyone, I am Tippeswamy BM, Assistant Professor of English at Government First Aid College, Chitrahalli, Chitradurga District. So we'll continue reading the poem A Prayer for My Daughter written by W.B. Yeats. So we are into session number 9. So in the last session, that is in session number 8, we looked into the introductory part where we mainly focused into two important aspects, that is to understand the significance of W.B. Yeats as a great poet and his contribution towards the field of literature. And then we tried analyzing the first two stanzas of his poem, A Prayer for My Daughter. So what we will be doing in this session is to analyze stanzas 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are 5 stanzas which we are going to analyze in this particular session. So the objective of the session is again to make a close reading, stanzas 3 to 7, and at the end of the session students will be able to analyze the poem and they will be able to understand it or various interpretations which are there in the poem. So we'll go to stanza 3. As you know that the poem starts with an image of a newly born child, and the poet is praying for the newly born child to his daughter, for the safety of his daughter and to safeguard his daughter from the stormy weather outside. So in the first stanza itself, the poet says that he has been praying for an hour and there is a stormy weather outside and there is nothing which can protect my daughter, so I am praying for the safety of my daughter. So the storm is symbolic of force of nature on the one hand, and on the other hand, storm is also symbolic of the political unrest that Europe was going through in the beginning of the 20th century. So the theme of the poem, that is a father's prayer for the safety of his daughter and his wish and desire to see his daughter to grow into a young and independent woman. So we go to stanza number 3. So in this particular stanza, he expresses his wish and desire that what kind of woman his daughter has to become when she grows up. So he says, may she be granted beauty and yet not beauty to make a stranger's eye distraught. So it's here he says that he prays for his daughter that she should be gifted with beauty. He wants her to grow into a beautiful woman. So beauty is necessary, that is what he says in the beginning. He wants his daughter to possess beauty. At the same time, he also says that he does not want her beauty to distort or make her dependent on her beauty for everything. So you have a very important suggestion given by the poet that what kind of daughter he wants to see in the future, that he says that his daughter should be gifted with beauty. At the same time, this beauty should not become the reason for the distraught or the sorrows or the sadness which she can or which she could face in her future. Or he also says that she should not come to the conclusion that beauty is everything, beauty is the ultimate goal, and she should not end up thinking that beauty is essential for everything. So this is something very important to understand in the first 2 lines of this stanza. And further he says, or hers before a looking glass for such being made beautiful overmuch. So he says that he does not want her to become so proud of her beauty that she wastes her time by spending all day staring at the mirror, and as a result she fails to have the natural companionship. So this particular part of the stanza is very significant, that where the poet, he says that I don't want my daughter to become a too much admirer of her beauty that she spends most of her time standing in front of the mirror. What is important for me that she possess natural kindness. This is very important. So he says natural kindness, sympathy, having apathy towards others. So all these things are important rather than possessing beauty. Yes, beauty is necessary, but that is not the only end. What is important, that is to possess natural kindness. So the poet implies that too much beauty is dangerous and that he wants her to be beautiful enough to secure a companionship or a husband. Okay, so he says that beauty which will help her to secure a companion, that is sufficient, but she should not come to the conclusion that being beautiful is everything in her life. What she has to possess in her life is natural kindness, sympathy towards others, that is to respond to the sufferings of others, this is, or to understand the feelings of others. This is important. That is how I want to see my daughter to grow, not just giving importance to beauty but to natural companionship. So these are some important things which he expresses, the poet expresses in stanza 3. Then the next stanza is very much important for the reason that it has allusions or references to three important mythological aspects. The first one is that of Helen, and the second one is that of Aphrodite, and the third one is that of Horn of Plenty. So I'll come to that and I'll explain them in detail. So what happens in stanza 4 that Yeats is substantiating his earlier comment that beauty has always been a source of trouble and destruction. So looking beautiful should not become the only goal of a woman. So he says that beauty has always resulted in a source of trouble and destruction, and he substantiated by giving the example of Helen. So if you are familiar with the Greek mythology of Odyssey and Iliad, and if you are familiar with the story of Troy, you all know the name of Helen. Helen, being the most beautiful woman, she gets married to an old man, old king Menelaus. After that, she falls in love with the young prince of Troy, his name is Paris, and she elopes with him. This in turn results in the great war of Troy, and it results in the loss of life of so many people. So this is what Yeats is referring to here. He says Helen, being chosen, found life flat and dull, and later had much trouble from a fool. So very important. So she finds her life very dull and flat because she got married to an old man, and that results in her getting attracted towards a young and charming Prince Paris and later eloping with him, and that created so much trouble, not for herself, not just for herself, but for so many other people. So it says that Helen in Greek mythology, who is considered to be the most beautiful woman on earth, she wrought the doom upon herself and many others. So this is very significant. So she finds herself in a situation that she is very much disappointed that she got married to an old man. So she falls in love with a young prince, and breaking the wedlock, she elopes with him. And as a result, she wrought the doom not only for herself but for many others, because if you read the story of Troy, you will come to know that it results in the destruction of the entire Troy kingdom. The great king Menelaus, to take revenge on Paris, he attacks the kingdom of Troy, and it results in a great tragedy. So the image of Helen here also evokes another important Greek mythological character of Aphrodite. So we will try to understand what he has to say about Aphrodite. While the great queen that rose out of the spray. So when he says that great queen who rose out of the spray. So who is that person who rose out of the spray? He is referring to Aphrodite, an ancient Greek goddess who is considered to be symbol of love, passion and procreation. She being fatherless because she got her birth out of the spray, she had all the chances of selecting her own companion. But in spite of all this, what Aphrodite did, that she accepts Hephaestus, a bandy legged smith, to be her husband. So this is very significant, where he has two references. One is that of Helen and the other one is of Aphrodite, where both of them they make mistakes. Being beautiful, they still make mistakes of selecting their companions. So as a result, what happened with the life of Aphrodite, that also resulted in a kind of tragedy. And also in the life of Helen, we witness the great tragedy of Troy kingdom because of the decision taken by Helen. So both these beautiful women, they have made a wrong decision when it came to the selection of their companions. So what exactly Yeats is trying to suggest through these two references? So here it is not just his prayer for his daughter, that I don't want my daughter to become as beautiful as Helen and Aphrodite and end up choosing a wrong companion. Here he is also suggesting his personal loss, where he is referring to the union of Mordaunt and Colonel MacBride. So Mordaunt, to whom he developed affection, but later he was rejected by her, and Mordaunt, she married to Colonel MacBride. So the reference of Hephaestus, a bandy-legged man, may be indicative towards the Colonel MacBride episode. Okay, so he says it is certain that the fine women eat a crazy salad with their meat, whereby the horn of plenty is undone. Okay, so he says that the poet, he wonders if these beautiful women eat something stupid for their salad, for their food, because they end up making stupid decisions which brings misery forever. And he says that even if the women, they are given the rich horn of plenty. So one more important reference. So the term horn of plenty refers to a Latin word called cornucopia. Cornucopia refers to a funnel shaped object which is full of abundant overflowing flowers and fruits. So horn of plenty is symbolic of abundance, symbolic of fertility, symbolic of richness. So what Yeats is saying, that these beautiful women, even if they are given horn of plenty with so much of things which they can enjoy, but still they end up losing it or doing one or the other mistake. So the horn of plenty here is suggestive of courtesy, aristocracy and ceremony that is lost by those women who make stupid decisions. So at this point of the poem, one can also have a feminist interpretation, where maybe Yeats is generalizing certain things here. So there are some objections to these particular lines, where he says that beautiful women end up making mistakes and they eat crazy salad, or even if you give them a horn of plenty, they end up making stupid decisions. So these are generalized statements which are questionable, may not be agreeable for many. But if you just analyze this poem as a poem where he is praying for the safety of his daughter, and what are his desires towards his daughter when she grows up, where he says that my daughter should grow into a individual human being with natural kindness rather than beauty, because we have seen, we have witnessed throughout the history in our mythological stories that beautiful women they have made blunders by the decisions, stupid decisions they have taken. So moving on to stanza 5. So he says, the poet, he says that his daughter, she has to be compassionate and kind. So these two qualities are important for him, not beauty, because many times men who believed to love and loved by beautiful women faced disappointment when they compared themselves to those men who found love in the most modest yet compassionate women. So he juxtaposes the qualities of a beautiful woman with that of a woman who is compassionate. So what the poet says that many men, they believed that they have received love, or they have been loved by a beautiful woman, but ultimately they ended up with so much of disappointment. But on the other hand, a men who found companionship in a compassionate woman, they ended up leading a modest and happy life. He says that modest and courteous people attract the hearts than those with beauty, referring to his own marriage. So what is important according to him, that is to have courtesy, that is to have sympathy, natural kindness rather than beauty. So he wants his daughter to grow up as a woman with kindness rather than giving importance to too much beauty. So ultimately he makes it clear that he wants his daughter to be an agreeable young woman and not an arrogant woman. So things are very much clear here in the stanza 5, that compassion is important, yes, sympathy is important, and being agreeable, that is to make sure that you are a person who can lead a happy life with everyone, that is significant, rather than being arrogant just because of your beauty. So in the next stanza, he says that may she becomes a flourishing hidden tree, that all her thoughts may like the linnet be, and they have no business but dispersing round their magnanimities of sound, nor but in merriment begin a chase, nor but in merriment a quarrel. Oh, may she live like some queen laurel, rooted in one dear perpetual place. So in this stanza also, Yeats continues to talk about his hopes and expectations for his daughter. He says as she grows up, he wants her to be happy and content. So these two qualities are very important, that he wants her to be happy and content with whatever she has. Content refers to, that is to be satisfied with the things which she possesses in her life, and he wants her to become a flourishing hidden tree. Yes, first she has to be content with what she has got. On the other hand, he wants her to grow like a flourishing hidden tree, that this flourishing tree can be a source of life for so many other people. So he wants her daughter to be a flourishing tree, and her thoughts like a linnet, referring to its innocence and cheerfulness. So the thoughts of his daughter should be like that of a linnet bird. So linnet here reference to a small tender bird which is very tender in its appearance. So he is comparing the innocence of an individual's mind with the tenderness of linnet bird. So he says that her thoughts, the mind of my daughter, should that be of a linnet bird, referring to the innocence and cheerfulness. And further, he wants her to lead her life like a queen laurel. So here laurel refers to the aristocracy and to that of royalty, where the laurel is rooted in a particular place. Like a queen laurel who is rooted in one dear perpetual place, the poet reveals his wish on his daughter that she should be rooted in the great Irish tradition. So here he expresses his desire that my daughter should make sure that she believes in the great Irish tradition of centuries, and she should be rooted in this great tradition. So this is what he expresses in stanza 6. So in stanza 7, continuing his prayer for daughter and his wishes to see his daughter as a grown up individual, here it says that kind, self contained, traditionally rooted women are incorruptible. So, in the last stanza, as I have explained, that he wants her daughter to be rooted in one tradition, one particular tradition, that is great Irish tradition for him. So, he says that self contained and traditionally rooted women are incorruptible. It is very difficult to manipulate such women. So, that is the reason for which he wants his daughter to be rooted in the great Irish tradition. And the poet considers that hatred to be the cause of all evil. So here he gives a very important suggestion that he don't want her to possess hatredness in her life, because that is the cause of all evil. Hatredness will never makes a person a strong or a happy individual. So he prays that his daughter to be let off that evil called hatredness, because hatredness has never resulted in anything good. So he believes that a soul, an individual, the mind of an individual which is free from hatred will preserve its innocent and the turmoil and cannot break a strong woman. So if a person possesses innocence in his or her mind, he will never be destroyed. So, in the last three lines of the stanza, when he says, if there is no hatred in a mind, assault and battery of the wind can never tear the linnet from the leaf. So, he says, even if there is a great storm, even if there is a great wind, if there is no hatred in the mind of an individual, that person cannot be shaken, that person cannot be destroyed. So this is what he says in stanza 7. So in this stanza, he wants her daughter to become self-contained. He wants her to be traditionally rooted in one particular place, so that she is incorruptible. And he also says that evil, hatredness is the cause of all evil. And he also suggests that he wants her daughter to be free from hatredness, which will preserve her innocence. And any turmoil cannot break a strong woman if she has innocence of mind. So in this way we can analyze stanza 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So I suggest you to go through the poem again and listen to the interpretation several times, so that you have a better understanding of what is being discussed. Thank you.